Been gone for a week, but back again now. Let's go through August, what we've done. Had to have a little change of the setup, gone from a computer to MacBook, so bear with me if anything's not the best. We're going to do our best and then adjust as we go along. As for August so far, I didn't actually do a video last week because there was no trades taken, and sometimes it's a bit boring talking through what didn't happen. Rather talk about stuff when moves have happened, which this week there was one trade taken. I've took another loss, so I am on a losing streak. This is a tough one. These last 2 months have been difficult, but I'm keeping my head up. I'm making sure I'm learning from my mistakes and all that. And we're not in a bad position overall. On the alpha, I've got 1% left on phase 2. That's looking like that's potentially going to go, but I've still got another 4.5% there. And I'm risking 2.4% in July. I've dropped my risk into August only because of the summer month. I'm going to be going from 1.5 to 1% on these and 2.4 to 2%. And then funded's going to stay 0.5% risk. So I'm down 2.3%. And this is the perspective I try and make, is that I'm in a drawdown period. Yeah, okay, I've had 5 losses in a row or whatever. But the main thing is that I have a good month. I'm going to get payouts. The account's there, it's sitting there, it's waiting to be traded when the good moves come. And as long as I can do that, these challenges don't really matter as much. Yeah, you can see it as blown money, but what I'm trying to do is build up capital and get to the point where I have $500,000 funding. And when you get a 5% payout, you're earning 20k off that. And then maybe buying a challenge is not really going to make a difference. So in the minute, it's a bit of grit to get through these. And again, on FTMO, dropping the risk from 1.5 to 1. Down 6.5% of phase 1 and 5.8% of phase 2. So once again, like, drawdown happens. We've all been there. You can see how these are looking. But the main thing is that there hasn't really been many trades in the last 2 months. And we haven't managed to get back into profit. But you can see that we just needed one good trade and it's going to make us go back into somewhere near profit. So it's all good. And I think that sometimes you just have to ride these drawdown periods. It's not always the best, and haven't enjoyed the trading as much recently. Of course you don't when you're not winning, but the reality is that it's going to happen at some stage. And last month was what, 1 point something R down, and this month down 1R. So it's not bad. And if I was sitting here missing loads of trades, I'd say, oh, missed this, missed that. I haven't really sat there and gone, I've missed this. This is a massive trade that I've unfortunately not been able to catch. So we're looking pretty good. But let's just go through the weekly candles and daily candles from the first week of going into August. Then we could see from DXY here, going back to where we had our key level, we've got sell confirms to come down. We don't really have anything in the way apart from this potential order block I quite like there for us to come down to. But I'm going to start marking up areas to the left that are potential obstacles until they become obstacles. So I'm going to leave that out. We know we had a potential imbalance fill there going into that week, but it was a long shot because that candle was so bearish. So the DXY, we're set up for the week for downside, really just expecting more downside, maybe a pullback at some point, but we need to see candles failing. And we know that we've got a nice order block here on the daily to pull back to. Got to get used to this window stuff. As for EU, if we go back to how we were looking, again, we had a high to retest. It was looking pretty good. We knew that coming up, we had this liquidity to come into, and we knew that could be a problem once we come and fill it. And we also have an air up here to the left, but I'm not going to fill that in yet. We know that really that's a pretty big wick. So behind us, I'd probably be marking that in now, being interested in price, potentially retesting that. And once you get past that high, it's harder to take buys, but I was looking for buy options and they just never come during the start of that week. And then GU coming into this first week of August, we were in this area, yeah, down here. So we've had pullbacks on GU. I think the overall structure is bullish, we can see that. And we've obviously left wicks to the upside here and rejected somewhere. But as a whole, I would look at this and I would say, you know, we've got this area. Price clearly had a problem at it, right? So that would be potential area to watch out for. As for to the upside, we also got a fair value gap we could pull back into. So again, I was being more bearish still because even though we could hold this low, really the fib legs like this, and I would see this as my low and high. And on the daily, if you go onto that, you would then look and say, okay, this is probably our low. So overall, once we come into that golden area, which lines up pretty perfectly with that weekly, are we going to really see the downside? So let's skip through the week. So I was expecting downside, I was expecting upside, and I was expecting downside. And that's what made GU hard to trade, because it was going against what DXY was looking like. But if we go through the week, we see Monday, we come down, and we obviously have an issue somewhere to the downside. So I ended up marking this massive, I don't think I tapped it. What was the area in here that we had problems at? That actually wasn't. Do you know what? It actually wasn't. So that made a low. EU started the week bullish, and it came up and it broke the high, and then we're coming through that liquidity, actually filled that area. We've had an issue within here on the daily, big fair value gap, so we're going to mark that in, and really now expecting a pullback. GU came down, tapped back into here again, and it's just like, what are we really doing here? Because we're still pulling back, but we're starting to have issues. We've had 3 failures even to break this daily fair value gap as well. So I was looking at this and I thought, yeah, you know what? Price having issues here, but we haven't really got confirmed to buyers yet, because we've been caught out in them the previous month. So I was very, very reluctant to take them buys, because it wasn't really a good move. Ended up coming down, and that's where I learnt my lesson from last month, and I was happy with that. That was a potential loss that I've avoided, and we never got tagged into that, which is good. And if we go to EU, we didn't really see a significant pullback. It's a weak candle. It could be an order block. DXY then gapped up, closed bullish. It's just not enough information here. So we skipped another day. We ended up tapping into this area. So we made that fair value gap and we fell straight from it, which made it very hard. I was really expecting price to come up into there, and I actually had a higher time frame EU position set within this area here for buys, but we never come back to that, and we could see that we just started to hold here to close the week. So it was a very dry week, man. That's what I'm saying. Like, when you're seeing EU with this candle, Friday's candle, the 9th of August, was the lowest volume candle in the year so far. So it shows you there's no volume in the market. What we do know, though, is that we've obviously come back into this daily fair value gap. So we know that we're obviously having issues breaking that at the minute. And then GU finished the week again. Really had massive issues to close the week. What I've noticed and bring in here is that we had 6 failures to break that daily. I just started to think that obviously we're not coming down, and I think I made an error here. This is where the error started to come in again, and judgment just got lacked a little bit. And I'm always there to accept my flaws and losses, that they always do happen. And sometimes, even though you're trying not to make mistakes and try not to make stupid decisions, that you still do. And that's something for me to improve on. Really, I don't have a problem with waiting for trades or anything. I just have a slight problem with the oversight looking back and going, you know what, that didn't really make sense as much as I thought it did in the moment. But we all can make our own trades up in our heads. It's the way it goes. DXY to finish the week, then we actually come higher into this daily, and then we closed bearish there to finish the week. So overall, this is what I wanted to break down more, is this next week, because this is where I took trades that didn't play out. We're looking at a pretty large weekly fair value gap we've just formed there behind us. We're obviously having problems here, though. We're having issues. I think an important thing to note on DXY is that when you've had an area and it's come into it before, and we've made that push up, made that high, and we've come back to the same area again, clearly this is a pretty strong zone that we're bouncing off. Looking at that weekly, it's not a strong bearish close at all. The Friday, in fact, I don't know why it's closed so strong like that, because it didn't look like that on the Friday close when I originally had it. We had a close further up and it looked weak. But what I was kind of getting at, maybe it didn't make too much sense on the daily, but the previous weekly high looked like it had to get taken on the weekly time frame. My idea was to come up and fill this area before breaking through this, because I just didn't expect the lows to be taken out, because as you can see that Friday close there was actually up here when I originally had it. I just don't know why it's doing that. So it was a weak bearish candle, and with EU, I think this is an important thing, and this is a massive error that I made. I didn't even take any trades on EU. It's just a massive error in the judgment that I had. But you see, when you get candles, when you're breaking up here and you broke this high, and we had that bearish candle there with a massive wick about 3 weeks ago, It just signified that we needed to come down because we originally come into a liquidity area. The difference with this weekly candle is if you were to fib up this leg, we took out this high low, we come down, made a new high. You've already seen a pullback into a discount area, right? So at this stage, when you make a new high, I don't really see, because we're in the same leg, there's no new low been made here, why we'd need to break this low or come massively back into this area. Whereas this leg, it was a brand new bullish leg. This one isn't. This is a continuation leg. So I don't think, looking at this candle, I looked at it and thought, it's a rejection. We need to come and take the previous weekly low out. We need to then come up. I don't think that was a good judgment to make in the moment. I think that it was better off looking at this as like, we're so bullish. We've had a liquidity area. We've come into it. We've even seen price now come up into this weekly fair value gap. And why this is such a good fair value gap is because it formed off the order block that made the high. And it was a perfect fill of it pretty much. And we're bullish. So we're just having a stall in price. And it was really as if as soon as you get a bullish candle here in this next week, you're good to go because you've had a daily retest of this area. And if we're having issues, then we're not going to come down back into this area, are we? So the pullbacks didn't really make too much sense. I think you had to go with the overall bias, which was very bullish on EU going into this week. And would that align with this? Well, I didn't really want to see EU come massively back down. Well, actually, I did based on my analysis, but it didn't make sense to. So it didn't really align with DXY that well looking back. As for GU, it's where I made an error. GU's either beautiful or it's a killer. It'll rob you of your R and all the profit you've made. There's no in between really. It's a bit more vicious and a bit indecisive than EU, but when it's good, right? If we go into this week, what do we see? I kind of made the judgment that, again, we haven't broken this weekly fair value gap. We've made another weekly fair value gap here. Has the pullback been done? What weighting did I give? I ended up giving a weighting that this was still looking good to come down. We just need to take the previous weekly high out. And maybe got that judgment wrong again. Really just looking back, we did see price come into a lower weekly. We decided that, yeah, price, you know what, come into this area. We tapped it. And that was an area that we had previously formed pretty good support to come up and make a new high. This is a tough one because you look at this and you think that wick's a rejection. You end up just filling the wick and coming down. You look at this one and then I start to go, actually, this wick could just get filled as well. We might not need to come up. And on the other side, you've got two failures into that weekly. But not only that, the daily gave you loads more information in the weekly here. We can see on the daily time frame, if we move this out the way, you've made a strong push up, right? You've made the high. You're staggering down a little bit on the pullback, on what you deem to be a pullback. When does the pullback stop? Because you have one candles. Clearly, sells are in control. When we get down into this daily fair value gap that we've been holding, how many times have we failed that? If you think about that whole week, if you actually properly deep it, that whole week failed to take that daily, that one daily out. That's not a good week. That's not a good week for downside. Actually, if anything, we've now seen 3 bullish candles. We've seen a takeout of these lows here. Big bullish candle. The next candle still closed bullish. The signs of bearish being in control, or the sellers being in control, whatever you want to call it, it's kind of gone. And we should not be expecting this area to come back down, I don't think. I think I made a wrong judgment, and it wasn't the easiest. It's not the worst sell. I've looked at the higher time frame position, and I've looked for a trade from there with about a 50 pip stop, expecting price to hold, pierce through the weekly and test the low. But within the fib, you've already come into the golden area. You're clearly filling the lowest areas on the daily. Like, you've nearly come into that order block, but the daily fair value gap, which is the clean low POI that's standing out, has been filled. So I looked for that sell, and really there was no setups all week. You can see coming into Monday, I didn't want to take anything on this day. There was nothing on EU because I'm waiting for a bullish confirm. Right, we get the bullish confirm. Cool. On DXY, we're bearish still. Now, I don't like to see this come down unless we take that. That was my analysis. So clearly there was a little bit of bias involved there. If anything, it looks bearish to me. This looks now like it wants to test the low. EU looks good for buyers, and I said it looks good for buyers, but my only problem is that where's our leg kind of going anywhere? Where is the leg? Because all I'm seeing here is 1, 2, 3, 4 days of consolidation going into last week. After that Monday, was it Tuesday, that push down? We saw like 3.5 days of consolidation. So when I'm looking for that 1 hour, 30-minute leg, I'm trying to judge. It just doesn't make sense to try and work out where an area here coming into this day. And we've got the Asia session range coming up here. I think if you had to go for a leg, you'd have to use this low and you'd have to use the high. Obviously, that's the end of Asian session. Then we're going to have to move that up. Yeah, so it moved up. You can see that this is the leg, which means I'd be looking for an entry within the discount here, which really stands out as this area. I'd probably like to got in a move here. And the reason being is because this could all just be a liquidity and it could all get taken out. And if it does, then you haven't really got a safe stop loss. I think 2 hour makes sense. If you look at this, I mean, just look at it. There's wicks everywhere, kind of aligning in that trend. That's all liquidity. We can even mark it in as liquidity, right? From that area there to there. So I'd be looking for a trade under here. And I think that would have been a good setup looking back. So if we look to see if that played out, we come into that liquidity just. You can see it, look, it took out the first point and it went. And it then continued up to the high. And it was a great move for the EU to go up. But just not my kind of setup to take in the strategy that I use. So I would have been looking for that move lower down. I don't have any regrets of staying out of that. I think there's many trades that lose because you're trying to trade within a very poor leg. I don't even think that leg's very good, but it did play out. And you can't catch them all as a trader. You can't try and be a do-it-all. You've just got to take the setups that you've marked in. I didn't mark in for that, but looking back, I would have gone for that as my move. So, as for DXY, we ended up coming down. We saw EU there. Obviously, after that bullish candle go up, and I expected that. GU has been more bearish recently in the last month. We've had a lot of pound weakness, and we ended up just piercing through, and that trade just got taken out there. I did have a higher position set within this weekly as well. After judgment, I decided to close this position before it got entered in because I just don't think it made sense. If we're looking at the pullback structure as well, the way you see that we're creating pullbacks, we've broken the lower high. We're expecting price now to pull back at some point to test the high. It may not even have to test the high. If there's a lot of volume and fundamentals push market, we're going to see these highs taken out. And yeah, if we can just get a pullback, which I don't know if we'll get because there's no real... if we go to today, I suppose we have now created this. If we were to pull back into this area or even this order block, it's a pretty good order block. I'd say we're looking good for the buys up to test the high, to be honest. I wouldn't expect us to pull back again. We're very bullish on GU overall. And that's what I got slightly wrong. Got quite out in the pullback. Quite out in counters last month on the medium time frames. Higher time frames now. Getting quite out in a change of direction and maybe even still a little bit counter. So all of my losses have come from counter. And it makes me think sometimes is it worth trading counter trades when they do have a lower probability. And you've got to get them spot on. You've got to know when the right time to pull the trigger is on these. Otherwise you get done. But overall I'm very happy with performance in regards to how you react off losses. You can't control always what your outcomes are, but you can control your emotions. And going into next week and the week after, we've got 2 more weeks left. I'd be glad if we can get a win. If we can get a win, the month will be profitable. Things will be looking good going into September. But really, if there's no trades that pop up and no trades that look good, then I'm not going to rush taking entries. You can see that the markets have been stiff. They've been moving through fundamentals. We can just look at that mostly through the DXY. If we were to see that from middle of July to the end of July, it was consolidation. We had 2 days of movement, which is NFP, and then we had another week consolidation before we saw the lows tested there. And DXY for the week ended up finishing... Well, it's still struggling to come down. So maybe I wasn't wrong in the fact that we still have to come up to take this low out. But I'm going to need to see confirms. And that's going to come next week. So we'll see. But we're very bearish. The dollar's looking weak. Recession's looking likely. It's just how long is that going to take before that comes in? And the news this week didn't do too much. I think we saw CPI for both pound and USD yesterday. We're dropping back to that, at least for the pound inflation target, around 2%. But we've actually increased a little bit there. So it'll be interesting to see how we react going into the end of this month and into next month, where we see the next CPI come in. But let's see what we do there for the next couple of weeks. The journey's slow. The journey doesn't come at you rapidly. I have tried to be quicker in the way I do things, right? But that's not always going to yield success straight away. I've still got to go over the road humps, and I'm enjoying the journey. I think before I used to have an envious feeling that I wasn't making it quick enough, or I was looking at other traders. But now I'm just in my own zone. I'm doing what I need to do, and I'm not watching other traders. I'm enjoying the process, and I've got good traders around me to keep me accountable as well, and that's what it's all about. So yeah, guys, we'll be back next week. Let's hope we catch something. Let's keep going, because these are gonna keep rolling out regardless of how I do, and I know by the end of this year I'll have more funding. So let's just keep at it. Peace out, man. See ya.